Hi, I'm Bryan Kramer, author of Human to Human and Shareology. Today on the show, we talk about why loss of context is affecting us in humanity, how to inject human moments into our automated world, and surprise, how Amazon is the most empathetic company in the world. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to part 2 of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives with our special guest today, Bryan Kramer. He's the author of 2 best-selling books. He's a Forbes contributor, a TED Talk speaker. Bryan Kramer is a renowned business strategist who serves high-performing coaches, consultants, and leaders accelerating their business. He's a global keynote speaker and has presented all over the world to organizations including MasterCard, L'Oreal, NASA, GoDaddy, Harvard, and a bunch more. He is also, as I said, the proud father of Human to Human, which is a global movement. So let's welcome back Bryan Kramer. Woo! All right. Good to be back. And now let's jump in. We've covered a lot in the last section. We talked about the birth of Human to Human, what it brought about for you, the change it forced you into, and how you were sort of awakened by your son in that process. Now I want to move into the sort of more practicality of this, because the Human to Human movement that you did was to set out to humanize business. And you talked about the beginning of the internet, and I remember it very well. And I remember the beginning of the internet, and then there was this thing called Internet 2.0. That was what it was called. I don't know if you remember that. I remember being in those rooms with those guys and talking about Internet 2.0. And we didn't know what it was, but actually it was interactive. It was, as opposed to shoving things up on a billboard, it was now like in communication with people. And it was very simple and kind of clunky, and then it became very complicated. And in many ways, Human to Human is about simpler communication. You talk about empathy and celebrating the imperfections. Talk to us a little bit about that, because I think that is so important today.
Well, I think that so Human to Human is like one of those things that there's so many different ways that you can go with it today. I mean, where we've gone and what we've done and how the pandemic has shaped us and what's happened and all the different things that have happened. Now it's human is Zoom to human.
Yeah.
And so, what we really and where it's heading, I mean, with augmented reality and virtual reality and just you look at automation and bots and AI, and it's just like it's mind-boggling what's coming and how all of this is going to shape shift. And yet in the midst of all of this, what matters the most is the human moments.
Yes.
Because we're all in the midst of trying to figure out how do we be. How are we being in the midst of all this, and what matters to us the most? How do we show up? How are we around customer service? How are we around the moments that somebody's going to actually go, wow, that mattered to me? And that's down to the customer. The customer is like the moment that matters, right? And so at the end of the day, it really is about the customer, and it's the customer at the center. It's what we've always been saying. And at the end of the day, it's always about like walking over to a whiteboard and putting everything up on saying, what's the customer journey, and where in the customer journey is the human moment?
Right.
And most of the time it's not there. We're just trying to automate the entire thing, and we're trying
the human to human moment that would normally happen might have been a customer service moment that is now a bot.
right.
That is now or some kind of pretend human who gives a by route answer, who is supposed to make it easier but creates way more frustration. So the part of it's one of the things that I find a wonderful it's for me, it's a puzzle, and I like it because my background is in psychology, so it's a humanistic psychological base that we are compelled towards finding things that are convenient and ways to make things convenient. But if we make them convenient at the cost of humanity, we lose. Yet we still keep pursuing convenience. So, the great analogy I give all the time is, tell me anybody who loves Amazon. When you think about who they are and what they're doing in the world, most people are kind of pissed off at them. If you've had a small business, you're pissed off at them. If you have you're a store that you pay rent in, you're kind of pissed off at them. If you're a vitamin store, whatever it is, you're pissed off at them. If Jeff Bezos is buying a yacht that costs more than the GDP of some countries, you're pissed off at them. And yet you're ordering from them, right? So it's this convenience versus the humanity. And so, when we talk about that in this idea of H2H, we've got to remember that you're the one, you as in not you, Brian, or me, but all of us, we're the ones who are facilitating the lack of humanity. I deal with Amazon at a business level, and they're horrible on the back end of people who sell things through them. Like it's a minefield. It's difficult. As is, by the way, as is Apple, which is another big company. Wonderful for the customers, terrible for the providers. So talk to us about what you understand about this dilemma between the convenience, which actually doesn't have the humanity in it, and the need for humanity, which I think is at the root of what I said is the epidemic of loneliness.
Ah, wow. What a powerful question. What a powerful question. You're so right. So epidemic of loneliness. That's a great, that you need to write a blog on that, the epidemic of loneliness.
Yeah, I've actually got several videos on it, and I've got a couple of articles that are already in process around it.
Good. That's such a powerful sentence right there. First and foremost, I want to reframe that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to reframe it because I think that we need to reframe it as the epidemic of solitude,
Mm-hmm.
not the epidemic of loneliness.
Okay.
Because I think we see ourselves lonely, and marketing and sales takes advantage of that. And
Yes.
so they say, we will deliver this to you. We will take care of you because there's loneliness around this. And we have seen this last year as humans as a lonely place to be. There's two sides. It's duality. There's a huge duality to this whole year.
Absolutely.
And it's a state of mind psychologically. We are not lonely. We are in place of solitude. We're in a place of choice. And now that's not totally true. There are some people that are totally alone and they just have to, my grandma who's like 98 in a home couldn't be with other people. That's lonely. Like there's nothing you can do about that. Now there's a lot of people that I think we are in choice of that. Now, when we're talking about companies that are taking advantage of that, back to your point, I think that that companies have a first, like I actually still think that companies like Amazon are wholly serving a purpose, whether you like or dislike them on the back end.
Sure.
They are still serving a purpose on the front end that actually does what they say they're going to do.
Absolutely.
And that's all I care about as the customer, which is that they will serve they give me my thing that I buy on time every time, 99% of the time.
Yeah.
And they take it back just as often, which my local store won't do.
Yes.
That's a big deal.
Oh,
That's
no
a
doubt
really
about
big
it.
deal.
Amazon is a great business model. They take care of their customers.
And
no doubt about it.
I'll boil it down to one word. which is the craziest word of all time, to get to assign, and you're gonna go, what? You're crazy for saying this. Empathy. And you're gonna
Okay.
be like, how is Amazon empathetic?
Okay. Tell us.
Because they do not argue with me. When was the last time that Amazon ever argued with you to take back something? Never.
Mhm.
They take everything back. They're like that old Nordstrom story that took a tire back. They will
Right.
take anything back that you have to return, no questions asked. Now, sometimes you end up paying a little bit of a shipping fee, maybe every once in a while. I rarely hear about it, but they are so easy to deal with. They are so empathetic to their customer that they have completely reversed how a customer feels in having to return a product.
Right.
Now, that completely reverses any reason to have to go out to a store. Now, I'm coming back full circle to your loneliness versus solitude.
Mhm.
And I feel in solitude, not lonely with Amazon. Solitude because I can return my product, not lonely because they're going to leave me alone and not take care of me. It's
Mhm.
such a different dichotomy. And
Yeah.
if every company could actually make us feel in solitude, not alone, it would be different. And local companies, when they get the grasp of that, then Amazon won't take over.
Do you think they will, though? Do you think local companies will get that?
No,
No, I don't.
unfortunately not. No,
Well, I
I
don't think they
wish.
can afford to,
No, it's
because
the
it's a different
restocking
deal
fees
for
and
Amazon to take it back and have warehouses, quite literally. I don't know people who know this, but they have warehouses full of returned goods. And unfortunately, much of that ends up in the landfill. It doesn't even get resold. Um, and a small company, you know, a mom pop deal, they can't do that.
yeah,
It's not possible.
yeah,
It would kill them business wise. So that's part of the challenge of dealing with this monolithic size organization is, you know, um, it's changing the face of it. But again, to my point, we we are so addicted to convenience, and Amazon are a world class drug dealer on that convenience, right? They deal convenience like mainline, and you know, when you get everybody hooked on that, it's pretty difficult to get them off. So let's go a bit further in this, because you know, we were talking earlier about social media, and we're talking now about customer service and empathy and all those kinds of things. And you know, you've spoken well, you speak a lot about this, and you talked a lot about it in your book. You know, for instance, during the last presidency, the Donald Trump presidency, there was a ton of it, and not just by him. I'm not pointing the finger there, but Twitter wars. There's Twitter wars between, you know, the Kardashians and somebody else, or two pop stars, or you know, as well as political figures. And and I've noticed this, certainly because I've been around long enough, even in emails. It's so damn difficult because the context is not there. So I have to actually frame a context before I actually write an email and say, here's where I'm coming from. This may seem aggressive, but it's just a point, and I want you to understand I'm not coming from that place. But immediately say I'm not coming from that place, it's kind of like saying I'm not a racist, but you know, it's kind of like, so you set a false context. And I know you wrote about context in the book, so can we speak about the 4 rules of social context, because I think that that is vitally important today in keeping us human.
yeah. Well, I mean, context is everything right now, right?
Absolutely, it is absolutely everything.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
say it
there.
all the time. I'm old enough to remember when people in social media or online marketing said content is king. I used to believe that content is not king. Content is a scrubber in the street. It's nothing. Context is everything now. If you
Right.
can frame the context, that's everything. But that's a challenge. So talk to us about your four rules of context.
Yeah, well, you know, it's there are uh contextual ways that we can approach um, how we do anything in life, how we approach everything, not just in social media.
No.
Um, like you said, context is king, but context is everything, and how we understand what people are coming at, what they're saying, what they're
Yep.
doing, what they're being. There is empathy in context. There's uh, um, how we approach things all together. And so one of the things that I like to talk about is first and foremost is how do we share context. um, Sharing context is such a hard challenge, because you don't really, your context is not my context.
Absolutely.
Your understanding of what you're seeing is not my understanding of what I'm seeing. We don't we especially, like you just said, in the Trump era, if you will, or even in
Mhm.
any presidency, we all see things differently. And so
Yep.
context is contextual to each of us differently. So how we do that and how we come at it is through having an alignment. We have to be in alignment first before we can have context. And doing that doesn't mean that we're going to be doesn't mean that social media is actually the best way at it.
No.
Social media is not actually the answer for proper context. I know I wrote a book on social media, and now all of a sudden you're like, how could you write a book on social media and be talking about context, and be saying you can't have context on social media? I wrote the book 4 years ago, and I'm actually rewriting that one statement,
Hmm.
because now looking back, you can't have context on social because the conversation's not long enough on social media. Unless you consider a podcast social media, or you consider video social media, which I quite frankly uh, consider long form social media, video content and stuff like that, not actually like true social. Tweets and Instagram and stuff like that is how context gets passed improperly.
Hmm.
And so then all of a sudden context is shared improperly, and now your context is misconstrued, and now we are misaligned together. If we are to get aligned, that means that we have to have conversations like this. And to do that, it means that we have to have more human to human conversations, not less human to human conversations, which we are having less human to human conversations right now. So,
But at the same time, Brian, let's just address that, because you know this show, of course, our listeners are, there's a lot of Fortune 500, but there's also a lot of entrepreneurs, and some very young entrepreneurs who are part of this. And they're like, well, how am I supposed to have these human to human conversations and run my business, which is, dependent upon social media nowadays, because sure as hell nobody's taking any ads in Yellow Pages. So how do I juggle that? Because I need to be on social. I need to get these things out there. And I think that in many ways, uh, I'm a fan of the human being. I'm not a fan of the message. I love Gary Vaynerchuk as a human. I think he's, I see him, and I actually know people who know him very well. One of his closest people is a very good friend of mine. Um, but I wouldn't have him on my show to talk about social media, because I so detest the message, which is 100 pieces of of content a day, which is no context. It's just bombarding. But a lot of people are believing that's what they have to do. So the human to human goes out of the window.
yeah, context is the killer of confusion.
Hmm.
It is. It really allows for yeah, it context is the circumstances that forms the setting for an event, a statement or idea, in terms by which it can be fully understood, but also it can create complete confusion too.
Yes.
We forget it's what creates chaos.
Hmm.
when you don't get it right. And yes, it is it shows the dark side, not just the light side. And there's a dark side and there's a light side to social media.
Hmm.
And that is what's always been there. And we're all addicted to the dark side and the light side at varying levels of it.
Sure.
And that's what people are gravitating towards. And to what you're talking about, he takes advantage of that, the varying levels and the varying degrees of that in how he can attract through even right now, like NFTs. And he's an early adopter of those kinds of things. And so, there's a danger in that, that who knows what's going to happen in some of these early innovations and what's coming. And there's a light side to that, in that he's willing to take the risk on for all of us,
Yep.
and do that. And if he fails powerfully, he fails powerfully in front of all of us.
Oh yeah. And
um
as I said, I literally really like the human being. I have a great affinity
yeah,
to him. I feel a pull towards him. I like where he comes from. But the problem is that it's a mainline drug again, right? It's like
right.
100 pieces of content. And I've watched people burn out trying to get 100 pieces of content out a day. And it's like, you just devalued yourself. You're now flooded a market where, yeah, you're in front of everybody all the time, but you're actually in front of people who want to go click, go away, next, scroll past that, seen it. So we're coming towards the end of the show, and I want to make sure that we get to these couple of key points, which I think are very key points, and that is this. I want to know from you, and this is always my question: what is one thing our viewers, our listeners can go do that will allow for us to integrate what what is your message, that they can really get, not necessarily about context, but about all of your messages, about human to human, about making small 1 degree shifts to create massive change? What is something we can do right away that our listener go, okay, I'm going to put that in action? What would that be, Bryan?
um the thing that I would do is I would walk over to a whiteboard right now, whether or get your team on Zoom and pull up a virtual whiteboard,
Mm-hmm.
and I would map out your content journey or your customer journey, whichever it is that is more challenging. And I would look at the entire thing in and or throw it up on just map it out, just scratch it out. If you don't know it, like throw it up on a, just like, don't go for perfection, just get it out,
Right.
and look at it and toss it around and throw darts at it and say what is right with this and what is not. And then now look at it and go, where is the human engagement in that? What are we over automating? What are we trying to do with this that is not getting engagement? The thing about most marketing metrics and most metrics, just metrics, is that we're going for click rate, close rate, and conversion rate. What if we just got rid of those and we just did engagement rate?
Mm-hmm.
Just engagement rate. And we didn't care about as much
Mm-hmm.
the other things. And we just did engagement rate. Because if we just did engagement rate, the other things will happen.
Yes.
They will happen because we're engaging people. We're giving them what they desire, what they need. And engagement rate, when it goes up, and I'm talking about engagement rate on every level, engagement rate inside a company, engagement rate within your employees, engagement rate with your customer, engagement rate with your potential customer, engagement rate on social media. The people don't look at engagement rate as high as they need to. So go look at your content and go look at all of your posts and go look at all of your stuff and look at why your engagement rate isn't as high as it can be. And I guarantee you it's because you're automating more than you're engaging.
Beautiful. That's a great point. That's a really great point. Please tell our listeners, our viewers, where they can find out more about you, about your books, about your resources, about H2H movement, all those things.
About my books, and so Human to Human is on Amazon. You can get Human to Human or Shareology, how sharing powers the human economy. You can get it all at bryankramer.com and follow me there. Everything's at bryankramer.com. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Bryan. It was great to have you on. As of course, we will make sure that we post all of those links to Bryan's materials, to his books, and of course to the H2H movement and Shareology, all those kinds of things. And you can tap into them. And I encourage you to do so. If you would like to know more about that, like you said, you can go to all of those places. And for you, dear listener, please remember that you can hang out with other conscious leaders. You can chat about this episode that you've been listening to or any past episodes on our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Go to Leadership and Loyalty podcast groups. You'll find them on there. Truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter how successful you are. If your employees and your customers don't understand what gives your company meaning, you're only working at a fraction of your true capability. To find out how you can hire me, Dov Baron, as a speaker or a leadership strategist for yourself or your organization, simply go to dovbaron.com. That's DOVBARON.com, because unified actualized meaning is the one single monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for individuals and for companies. So thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time. Stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about how you need to automate a little bit less and be human a heck of a lot more. I'm Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deepest meaning to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.